Tim Linder King says the United States government is committed to the UN brokered truce as first step to end the conflict in Yemen. A recent international report reveals that Houthi militia is responsible for acts of religious repercussions against Yemenis. A Saleh Charity Foundation distributes cash assistance to ease the suffering of displaced and needy people in different governorates. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Shazza Abdelbay. The U.S. Special Envoy for Yemen, Tim Linder King, said the government of the U.S. is committed to the UN truce in Yemen. Linder King added that the U.S. will continue its diplomatic efforts in Yemen, but the core responsibilities for peace lie with the parties themselves. He also added that the 2-month truce is giving small hope to Yemenis who have suffered through war. The U.S. Special Envoy for Yemen, Tim Linder King, met the Yemeni ambassador to Washington, Mohammed al-Hadrami. The meeting included discussion about the recent developments of the Yemeni truce. They also discussed the importance of opening Sana'a airport and the need of lifting the siege from Taiz. An Egyptian member of parliament said the Houthi militia had detained 20 Egyptian fishermen. He added that their ship was pirated from the Red Sea more than a month ago. He further called on the Egyptian authorities to act immediately and end the crisis. International report confirmed the Houthi militia is responsible for 90% of religious suppression cases in Yemen. They added that the Houthi repression involved the impositions and suppression of religious beliefs and practices for sectarian reasons. According to the report, Houthi forces suppressed Sunni-leaning beliefs, especially in Ramadan 2021. A prisoner was killed by a Houthi leader in one of the prisons of Ib. Local sources explained that the Houthi leader executed the prisoner inside a police station without any legal justification. The sources pointed out that the incident took place inside the prison of the Damat Police Department in As-Sabara district. The joint forces thwarted infiltration attempts by the Houthi militia in Al-Dala. Military sources reported violent confrontations between the two sides, which took place in several locations in the governorate. They stated that the battles resulted in the death of 3 Houthi militants and the injury of others, in addition to causing heavy losses in equipment in the ranks of the militia. Few days ahead Eid al-Fitr, Yemenis are sandwiched between high prices and unpaid salaries. This report has more details.
As Ramadan rolls to a close, Al-Dala markets witness traffic by shoppers who are eager to greet Eid al-Fitr in fresh clothing and with delicious treats. Despite the soaring prices making acquiring Eid's necessities difficult and impacting commercial movement, families cling to the spirit of Eid.
Prices are rising every day. People who have 5 or 6 kids can barely afford to clothe one kid. Wheat prices have almost doubled. We need the government to stabilize the rial and establish a fixed price for buyers and sellers.
I am a merchant, so it's easier for me to purchase items, but prices are incredibly high. What would shoppers say? Prices are much higher compared to previous years. How would poor people clothe their children?
Displaced families living in war-torn Yemen are treated to low, irregular wages and salaries in some sectors, and some don't even get paid at all. Exorbitant costs for basic necessities have burdened the heads of families. The blessed Eid al-Fitr arrives with its own set of requirements, such as clothing, to compound the agony of the people of Al-Dala and make Eid's delight incomplete.
The exchange rate is unstable. When we buy goods, they have a certain price. When we sell them, they have another, due to the rate instability. At the end of the day, it's poor citizens who bear the brunt of this.
This year, the blessed Eid al-Fitr arrives, and many families are robbed of the joy they are accustomed to on such occasions, owing to insanely high costs, poor wages, and disruptions in facilities, in addition to a lack of cash for many families due to conflict and displacement.
The conflict in Ukraine continues to grab the attention of the international media agenda. This has affected other areas and crises such as the Yemeni one. People struggle to secure the basic commodities. This report has more details.
As the Muslim holy month of Ramadan begins, the soaring cost of food rises in import-dependent countries like Yemen, creating greater challenge for millions of families who are already struggling to keep hunger at bay. Traditionally, this month is a month of festivities when families gather over traditional foods to break their day-long fast. This year, millions will be struggling to buy even the most basic food items for their families, as the war in Ukraine has pushed food prices even higher than the troubling levels at the start of the year. The prices of wheat flour and vegetable oil, two key food items in the diet of most families, have consequently risen across the region. Cooking oil prices have risen by 36% in Yemen. The cost of a basic food basket, the minimum food needs for a family per month, registered an annual increase with 81% hike in Yemen. This has badly affected the culture of giving in this poor country, and the ability of people who used to give away charity and free food during the holy month of Ramadan to help the poor. Even in the worst of times, the month of Ramadan was a period when people came together, a time when they shared meals, set up food tables along the streets for those who wanted to break fast, and sent iftar meals to each other's homes. Somehow they managed to find a way to share whatever little they had. However, this year things are different. Food inflation has squeezed the small income of millions of Yemenis, and the situation is getting worse as the conflict over Ukraine continues. Yemen imports around 42% of its wheat from Russia and Ukraine, as they are among the world's top producers of cereals and grains, including wheat. Both countries have suspended exports, causing flour and bread prices to shoot up in Middle Eastern and African countries. Also, aid organizations are facing lots of challenges. A large food distribution center in the capital Sana'a said that it can feed only 500 families compared to the more than 3,000 families it catered to last year. Unfortunately, aid from many international organizations too was seized by various groups at the port before reaching those in need. This has seriously affected the Yemeni people. Yemen was already one of the poorest countries in the world before the civil war started. Then the conflict drove millions of people to the deserts and forced them to live in tents and on the roadsides. They have nothing but humanitarian aid to rely on. And now even that is difficult with the current war in Ukraine. How can a country like Yemen survive with all these challenges? And how can Yemenis live with all these back-breaking burdens?
The Houthi militia killed a merchant and injured two women in Al-Baida. According to local sources, armed militants shot owner of a shop in the city of Rada after he refused to pay taxes. They further confirmed the Houthi gunman's shooting resulted in the injury of two women while they were doing their shopping in the same city. The Houthi militia kidnapped merchants in Ib to force them to pay large taxes. The sources said the militia threatened other traders with imprisonment in case of taxes non-payment. They added that the Houthi militia prevented a large number of merchants from paying part of their zakat to needy people. The Houthi militia continues to impose taxes on merchants. Those who refuse to pay are exposed to killing or kidnapping, and the Houthi militia violates all the international laws for the sake of collecting taxes. This report has more details.
Houthis must leave. A new slogan that filled the walls in Sana'a, the Yemeni capital, and in other areas under the Houthi control. The slogans could be a prelude to an unbridled popular uprising that would hit these areas for a growing discontent and uproar against Houthi violations. There are standing appeals to the international community to pressure Houthi militia to stop their violations related to the looting of Yemeni livelihoods as well as humanitarian aid. Monitor for Rights and Freedoms said it had documented more than 48 cases of looting and confiscation by the militia of the properties of civilians and political opponents in Al-Mahwid Governorate. The organization condemned the looting, which included homes, cars, cash, and private property. It indicated that the militia is adapting laws and regulations to facilitate its control over the properties of civilians who oppose its rule. The Houthi looting is considered a collective punishment against civilians that is punished as a war crime in international humanitarian law. As to the humanitarian aid, the rebels continue to block work of international and local organizations. Accusations are mounting that the militia are making the humanitarian situation in Yemen worse. The rebels stormed global food warehouses in Hajj Governorate, looting more than 100 tons of flour and transferring aid to their fighters. Documented Houthi violations included manipulating the names of beneficiaries and imposing illicit fees or relief programs. The latest violations are gearing people under the rule of the Houthi rebels to stand against them and may propel a new reality in the war-torn Yemen.
A Saleh Charity Foundation continues to distribute its cash assistance project in Lahj Governorate. This project targets displaced and needy people. It is part of the foundation efforts to ease the humanitarian suffering of war-affected Yemenis. This report has more details.
The Ramadan Aid campaign provided by Al Saleh Social Foundation for Development continues distributing cash assistance to the poor families and displaced people in Lahj Governorate. The beneficiaries' faces were filled with joy and happiness after they found a glimmer of hope that removed a small part of the suffering of poverty in the blessed month of Ramadan.
First of all, I'd like to direct my thanks and appreciations to Al Saleh Charity Foundation and Ambassador Ahmed Ali Abdullah Saleh for the support they are providing for displaced people and families suffering from severe poverty in Aden and Lahj Governorates. That proves their good intentions and their great potential towards charity work.
We targeted 3,000 families in the governorate from the displaced people and poor families who are not able to cope and survive during the month of Ramadan. I want to thank the Ambassador Ahmed Ali Abdullah Saleh for easing the suffering of people during this hard time.
The Ramadan Aid of Al Saleh Foundation was aimed to reach those whose economic crisis has turned their situation into a tragic reality, and for those who were displaced by the Iranian-backed Houthi militia from their homes and found themselves overnight in camps in Tuban district, sleeping on the ground and waiting for anyone to ease their suffering and remove their burden even after a while.
We thank Al Saleh Charity Foundation for their efforts and support. We wouldn't have survived without their help. We are a displaced family here, and we are suffering a lot in the camps.
3,000 poor and displaced families benefited from the assistance of Al Saleh Social Foundation for Development in the regions and camps of Lahj Governorate, a humanitarian work that was new to this institution, whose management since its establishment has been serving and supporting Yemenis in peace before the war and in prosperity before hardship, according to the principle of equality in targeting without discrimination or politicization. The foundation's humanitarian work targeted displaced and poor families in different governorates in Yemen.
Coming next. Al-Kubar is an ancient religious tradition celebrated by Hadramis over years.
أقول لك راحت بالغداء لأهلها شلت الغداء وراحت بأهلها في المزرعة. والمزرعة ركبت على حمار ما حتى نص المزرعة وانفجر فيها اللغم. دعست على اللغم وانفجر فيهم. الحمار انتهى ما أدرى وتبقعت رجليها كامل. نغير منها نغير الشبالة اللي هي البنت سابحة من دور رجليها لما صافناها طبية أقرب طبية وصافناها لا هي بطلت رجليها كامل.
قلت الزود هلي وقابل لي لعام وطبعت تحت الزوايا.
Welcome back. Al-Kubar is a well-rooted social tradition which has been celebrated by people in Hadramaut for decades. This report has more details.
In a large area at the entrance of Al Anin zone in Al Qatn district, people are reviving the Kubar event, which is a Ramadan custom with its own rituals, filled with joyful atmosphere and beautiful memories. In Hadramaut, the customs and traditions that go along with the holy month of Ramadan remain renewed with the renewal of time and place. Perhaps one of those rituals that Al Anin area is famous for is Al Kubar Heritage event, rooted in the depth of history that has its own customs and rituals for nearly 200 years.
This traditional custom has existed since ancient times, and people come from different districts to attend this event, including youth, children and parents.
The Kubar event begins on the night of the 27th of Ramadan every year, in which the old and the young gather to revive its activities in a joyful atmosphere that has its right presence in the hearts of the general public. Children in this event have their big share, as they wear the most beautiful clothes and head with their passion to the side of the event. And there, the children begin their rituals and recite their famous traditional folk chants.
We've held this event before in Saudi Arabia in one of the biggest theatre houses in 2019. This was an attempt to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Islamic Cooperation Center. However, this event is unique in Hadramaut as it's the only event the government witnesses during the month of Ramadan.
The event enjoys wide participation, and just as it is for children, it also represents a vivid scene for parents who recall previous years gone from their childhood to relive the memories of the good times, so that this event remains a heritage that the citizens of Hadramaut are proud of and generations keep inheriting it through years.
The International Monetary Fund expected inflation rate in Yemen to increase up to 141%. Inflation expectations have retreated for low-income economies, including Yemen, Sudan, Mauritania, and Djibouti. The organization has warned that these countries have limited means to deal with high prices. Emirati Khalifa Foundation signed Shabwa General Hospital agreement with local authorities. They signed a cooperation agreement for the processing, operating, and management of Shabwa General Hospital Authority. This came as a rescue for Shabwa residents, in which they suffered lack of health facilities for years. The war in Yemen has damaged major infrastructure of health facilities. This report has more details.
The Yemeni health sector is suffering from the consequences of prolonged and ongoing armed conflict, economic decline, and institutional collapse. Availability of functioning health infrastructure, such as hospitals and primary care centers, has dwindled under the weight of conflict, with a significant share of the population having challenges with access to health care. Currently, only 50% of the health facilities are fully functional, and over 80% of the population faces significant challenges in reaching food, drinking water, and access to healthcare services. Shortage of human resources, equipment, and supplies are severely hindering healthcare provision. Furthermore, conflict has exacerbated health challenges and resulted in weak governance for the healthcare sector. Deteriorating health conditions are reflected in different shapes, such as high levels of child malnutrition, low immunization rates, and outbreaks of communicable diseases. Maternal and child health are particularly affected by the worsening situation, with latest estimates pointing to 1 mother and 6 newborns dying every 2 hours. Additionally, conflict has also taken a direct toll on the health of the population and is now estimated to be the third main cause of death in Yemen. Decreased external funding for health coupled with unprecedented challenges such as COVID-19 raise uncertainty about the future of health services in Yemen. The health system is extremely reliant on external funding, and the provision of health services is depending on development partners executing health programs. External financing for health has dropped drastically. With the ongoing war, Yemen will lose more of its health infrastructure. Nothing can stop such depletion but immediate end of the conflict.
Here's a reminder of the main headlines. Tim Linderking says the United States government is committed to the UN-brokered truce as first step to end the conflict in Yemen. A recent international report reveals that Houthi militia is responsible for acts of religious repression against Yemenis. A Saleh Charity Foundation distributes cash assistance to ease the suffering of displaced and needy people in different governorates. This is the end of the news. Thank you for watching.